Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be tilling our garden and preparing the soil for planting. So recently I've been seeing a lot of videos on people saying that no-till gardens are much better than when you actually till the soil, and I'm actually going to be showing in this video that that's not always the case. There are some benefits to tilling. Now to start out, I'm going to be tilling a section of my yard that I haven't had a garden in it previously. Depending on where you live, you could probably just put some cardboard down, make sure it kills everything that's there, pull it up and plant right on top of the soil without mixing it up. Our soil does not work like that. There's a ton of clay, and when clay dries out, it's really hard. It doesn't absorb water. It's not great for growing, and it just really needs to be broken up and have some soil added to it to make this usable. Ideally, you don't just want to pour fertilizer on top and soil on top, or else the roots aren't really benefiting from it that much. You want to break up the really hard soil that's there and then mix it in with some fresh, good soil, some fertilizer, some compost, and try to loosen that up so that the roots actually have a good base. Once they get started, they'll break up the clay that's there over time. It'll loosen up while you're using it as a garden. But to get it started, you really need to tear everything out, mix it all up really good, and loosen that soil so stuff can actually grow. I'm going to till the garden down about 6 to 8 inches. I'm trying to break this up as much as possible. I keep running into bricks. I think when they were building our house, they threw a lot of the bricks that they weren't using as fill into the backyard. So I'm pulling all the bricks, rocks, anything you hit with the tiller, just pull those out, because that's just going to mess up the roots that are trying to grow in the soil. So clear out any debris that's in there and try to mix it up really good. Once I've finished tilling the soil, I'm going to come back with some black cow manure fertilizer, and I'm going to be putting 3 bags right on top of the soil. Next, I'm going to be adding in some peat moss, and I'll put almost a whole bag on top of this section, and this really helps loosen up the soil and holds moisture in really well. And I'll mix everything in together once I have all of it added on top. Then lastly, I'm going to be adding in a full wheelbarrow full of compost and really fine wood chips as well. Now everything's added, I'm going to start mixing this all up. So you can easily do this by hand. Now that everything's loose, it mixes really easily, but you can also go back over once you've added everything, just till it all back together, and that really works nicely. The soil here is just so dry, so I keep adding a little bit of water to cut down on some of that dust while you're mixing and tilling the ground up. Now you can already see with some of that stuff added in, it looks so much better. The soil looks a ton richer and more inviting for things to actually grow in. Instead of this red clay, it's a lot softer and nice and moist, ready to go for some brand new seeds. Now that everything's mixed in, I'm going to go ahead and level the soil out here, and then I'm going to come back through once I'm done with that and sort of heap up my rows, so I have sections where I'm going to be planting rows down this whole area. Now that I have some nice neat rows, I'm going to start planting soon. And I'm going to come back through with some water and make sure I just soak this area. I want it to be really saturated when I plant the seeds. I'll actually come back over later and water once I'm done planting, but I want this to already start soaking up that moisture because it was so dry previously. Now we're going to be planting some corn today, a small section of glass gem corn. This is just a decorative corn. You leave it on the stalk until it dries out and hardens. You can use those corn cobs or the whole stalk as decorations in the fall. And then I'm also going to be planting a big section of popcorn. And that similarly, you leave it on the stalk until it dries out completely. Then you harvest the corn kernels off of the cob and you can use it as regular popcorn. And if everything goes well this year, I'm gonna try to expand this a little bit bigger next year so that I can have a large section of sweet corn and we can have fresh corn on the cob. Now, as far as planting and spacing in between, you really want to rely on what the company recommends. Each type is going to be a little bit different, how deep it goes and how far apart. So we just followed what it said on the packet that we were given, and that's what we went with. Everything's planted. Now I just have to wait and see how this turns out. Now, I didn't want you guys to have to wait, so I held off on this video until the corn was ready to show you guys, and 2 months later is when I'm actually posting this video. So in just a second, I'll show you guys what this looked like after 2 months of waiting. So 2 months later, this is what I've got. I'm really pleased with how these have turned out. They aren't ready to harvest yet. I'm going to be leaving these on until the stalks dry out completely. You can see here the ears of corn, and right above that is the pollen flower. These don't actually get pollinated by bees. I mean, the bees might stir up the pollen a little bit, but the pollen drops down and hits the hair on top of the corn cobs. Each one of those hairs goes down to a corn kernel, so all the pollen has to drop down, and when you plant the corn next to each other like this, it ends up pollinating each other. It works well when the wind blows, it blows the pollen everywhere, and so it's much more productive when you plant corn in sections like this. Now, I did notice the glass gem corn does seem like it blooms later in the season. It takes longer to grow, so there aren't any corn ears yet, and they don't have the flowers on top yet either. But you can see this is as tall as my trellis right here, at least 6 feet tall. And I did test this out as well with pumpkins. I tilled a small patch that I could plant some pumpkins, and they have exploded here as well. I tilled and planted this one at the same time as the other one. I just didn't show you guys. It's all the same steps as the other one. So that just about finishes up the video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Also, if you're interested in seeing some more gardening videos, I have some right here that you might like. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.